Hello guys, my name is Reza Amirul Prasetyo. I'm from International Management. I will explain about Principle 9 in Economic Inflation in Indonesia. What is inflation? Inflation is the decline of purchasing power of a given currency over time. A quantitative estimate of the rate at which the decline in purchasing power occurs can be reflected in the increase of an average price level of a basket of selected goods and services is an economy over some period of time. The rise in the general level of price, often expressed as a percentage, means that a unit of currency effectively buys less than it did in prior periods. So, why does inflation happen? And should we worry if it does? Why does inflation happen? An increase in the supply of money is the root of inflation. Through this can play out through different mechanisms in the economy. Money supply can be increased by the monetary authorities either by printing and giving away more money to the individuals, by legally devaluing or reducing the value of the legal tender currency. More or most commonly by loaning new money into existence as reserve account credit through the banking system, by purchasing government bonds from banks on the secondary market. Why is there inflation? What makes it happen? There are three reasons. First, cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is a result of the increase in prices working through the production process inputs. When addition to the supply of money and credit are channeled into a commodity or other asset market, and especially when this is accompanied by a negative economic shock to the supply of key commodities, costs for all kinds of intermediate goods rise. Number 2. Demand inflation. Demand inflation occurs when an increase in the supply of money and credit stimulates overall demand for goods and services in an economy to increase more rapidly than the economy's production capacity. This increases demand and leads to price rises. With more money available to individuals, positive consumer sentiment leads to higher spending, and this increased demand pulls prices higher. It creates a demand supply gap with higher demand and less flexible supply, which result in higher prices. Number 3. Printing money. If the money supply increases faster than real output, then ceteris paribus, inflation will occur. If you print more money, the amount of goods doesn't change. However, if you print money, household will have more cash and more money to spend on goods. If there is more money chasing the same amount of goods, firms will just put up prices. The printing of money will eventually lead to the devaluation of our currency and higher inflation impacting goods and services of all types. What happens when the government prints too much money? If the government prints too much money, people who sell things for money raise the prices for their goods, service, and labor. This lower purchasing power and value of the money being printed. In fact, if the government prints too much money, the money becomes worthless.
Has Indonesia ever experienced large inflation?
Indonesia had undergone massive inflation in 1960. The Indonesian economy continued to suffer a decline through 1960 until 1966. Indonesian export fell from 840 million to 680 million US dollar. The main factor causing the decline in the value of export is the fall in the selling price of rubber in the international market by 50% since 1960. At that time, rubber was Indonesia's main export commodity, while other export goods such as tea and tobacco also declined in volume and quantity. Since 1960, the campaign to cross Malaysia has also turned out to have exacerbated Indonesia export trade since the Indonesia taxi base carry out an economic embargo on Malaysia. As a result, it was difficult for Indonesia to find new markets that were ready to accommodate export sales. At the time, the government budget was also allocated for giant projects on island of Java. For example, TVRI Station, Gelora Bung Karno, National Monument, and Istiqlal Mosque, and also the implementation of 1960 Asian Games in Indonesia. All of these projects raise the degree and dignity of the Indonesian nation, but actually there were many things that were more prioritized to improve the welfare and economic independence of various regions at that time. Data infrastructure in various regions is still very minimal. Areas outside Java have no paved roads, not many piers of ports, not many markets that are the center of the regional economy. The state budget has a minimal income deficit with a very large population. The economy is only centered on the island of Java. Indonesia has no room for economic movement at all. It was at this time that the Wong Indonesian government did not have any alternative to cover the budget. Finally, took a step that would be end in a nightmare. There is print money as much as possible. The government continues to print money to finance the need of the military budget and also development project on the island of Java. The massive printing of money result in the circulation of money being out of control. From 1960 to 1966, the money supply in the community increased 150 times at that time. Indonesian people were flooded with a lot of money. All of southern Indonesia have a lot of money, but instead of getting rich, they become poorer and suffer. Because of the large amount of money, the price of basic necessities also grew near the 1960s. The price of basic necessities grew almost 260 times. The peak of Indonesia inflation rate grew to 594% in 1965. At that time, everyone had money, but there was not goods available. Price of materials such as rice and meat increased drastically every day. Money became worthless. Price continued to fall, and people value an handful of rice more than money as it continued to fall. And the result was that whenever people got the money, they could spend as quickly as they possible. People's continued flood of money has been making things even worse. With a shortage of basic goods everywhere and price rising. As the year 65 was becoming scarce and stores closed as they ran out of stock. People had to wait in line for the monthly allotment of the government allotment. This hyperinflation also undermined the government budget. Much of military equipment that was eventually damaged through in development and stockholders were very expensive. All effort made by the government to inflate hyperinflation, from price control, a domination of value from 1000 rupiah to 1 rupiah in 1965, but all those moves are useless. The government began to take a decision, namely to stop the process of printing money. And it turned out to be true. Once the government stopped printing money, inflation began to be controlled, the price of goods were stable, and the purchasing power of money was also more controlled. People were no longer worried tomorrow the money would be worthless.
Okay guys, that is the end video. Thank you for watching and see you, bye bye.